Hello marathon enthusiasts! In today's video we're revealing my top 5 tips to help you run your first marathon. So whether you're a newbie runner or working your way up to the 42.2 kilometer journey, these tips I hope will help you conquer your race day experience. So let's get stuck into it. First off, I've recently completed my first marathon, the Melbourne Marathon 2023. As you can see, my t-shirt here, still haven't taken it off yet. I dedicated a lot of training to the event and managed to finish in a time of about 3 hours and 37 minutes, which was 7 minutes over my goal time, but that's alright, that's what happens sometimes. But upon reflection, I've come up with 5 lessons which I hope that you can use in the form of tips to help you nail your first marathon race day experience. So let's get into it. Number 1, if you're running for a goal time, try and find and stick with a pacer. Now, if you're a newbie runner, you're thinking, well, what's a pacer? Well, many marathons have dedicated runners that run to a set pace to help others achieve a goal time. So, for example, 3 hours. Now, they're usually wearing some sort of distinguishing clothing or brightly colored clothing, or even sometimes wearing balloons or banners or signage which indicates what goal time they're running to achieve. It's usually at an even pace. So if you know that completing the marathon isn't going to be a problem and you are going for a certain time, then it might be wise to go with the pace group for your first or second marathon experience. And why it might be advantageous is you'll most likely be running with runners who have a similar ability to you, and also tactically might give you a bit of a boost if you're running in a bunch. It might actually protect you from the elements, so whether it's windy or whatever it might be. So that actually could give you a nice bit of an energy boost or energy saving boost if you're running in a tight formation or a pack for most of the 42 kilometer journey. So for example, I got to the start line of my marathon and I was looking for the 3:30 pace group, but there were so many people in the start chute already that I couldn't even get down to the 3:30 group. So by the time the 3:30 group had already started, I was way too far back to actually catch up to them and would have burnt too much petrol. But I do think had I stayed near that group, it definitely would have given me a boost to help improve my time in my first marathon. But having said that though, the pace group isn't the be-all and end-all. So if you're comfortable running your own race and pacing yourself, then you should have no problems either. Number 2, trust your training and limit unsolicited advice from others. Now, I think something that plagues first-time marathon runners is the fear of the unknown. And you'll hear people that love to tell you things such as you'll hit the wall, you'll cramp, you might have some toilet problems as well, you might get stomach aches, the works. You've heard it all before. But you remember, your experience is unique. So sure, these horror stories might happen to some people, but they also might not happen to you. You might not have any of these effects. So don't waste your energy worrying about problems that haven't occurred yet. And the best course of action for all these things is to practice and experiment with your long runs in the lead up to your first marathon. So whether that's experimenting with gels, fluid, shoes, clothing, whatever it might be, use those long runs as practice to help eliminate or reduce the risk of any of these adverse effects actually occurring. And when it comes to your training program, stick to what you've done. If you've put in the work and you've done, say, 12 to 16 weeks of a solid marathon training program, then have confidence in that and try not to listen to anyone else unless they're your coach. Now, a common one that I see occurs that pops up that actually creates a lot of anxiety is people asking how far their longest run should be of a marathon training block. Now, some people say, oh no, you need to run 35 kilometers or you shouldn't run any more than 30 kilometers. And that can create a lot of anxiety within people and make them feel like they're unprepared, which I don't think is particularly necessary. And for me, my experience, I knew that if I could run a 30 kilometer race 6 weeks out, I'd be fine, which I accomplished, and that gave me some confidence. But I think a good rule of thumb at the moment, and I'm working with, is if you can roll out of bed and you can run a half marathon in training, then you can run a marathon on game day, essentially. So have that in the back of your mind, but always have confidence in the training that you've completed because nobody else has done it for you. Number 3, maintain a normal week in the lead up to your first marathon event. So the week leading up to your first marathon can definitely be a bit of a mental challenge because you've reduced your running volume, you're tapering, you're carb loading as well. So that might make you feel like that you're detraining or you haven't done enough work, and there's anxiety that you're not prepared, and all these things can sort of spiral and creep up at the worst possible time. But remember, you're not a professional athlete and you still have commitments as well, which is a big thing to focus upon. keep life as normal as possible. If you go to work, do everything that you usually would. I probably made the mistake of going too far the other way and let the marathon consume me before I even run it. And so much so that mentally I'd probably run the marathon about 20 times before I've actually done it. So I was probably wasting too much emotional energy, which I didn't really need, to be honest. So make it easier in the week physically, in the week. Find your balance and stick to it, because it definitely will pay dividends. Number 4, enjoy the bloody experience. This is probably one of the most important ones that I failed to do in my marathon. So it's an overlooked aspect of the experience, but this is the culmination of all your training, all your injuries, all your dedication and hard work. So when you get to the start line, make sure you take a second to look around, smell the roses, enjoy it, and pat yourself on the back for getting to that point, because it's an awesome accomplishment just to get to the start line as well. So, and that extends to when you're on the course. So make sure you absorb the environment and the cheers from strangers and lollies you get handed and stuff like that, because absorb that, and don't just think about the journey from point 0 to point 42. Make sure you try and zoom out and remember where your feet are. Lastly, number 5, embrace the congestion on the track, because truth be told, there's not much you can do about it. So let's address the elephant in the room, particularly with the major city marathons, is the amount of people that are actually running as well. So we'll call this congestion. Now, it's almost unavoidable, particularly the first 10 kilometers. If you're running a marathon, there's people everywhere, and you're running up gutters and footpaths and things like that, and you're changing speed and direction to try and get some clear running room. And to be honest, you can't do much about it unless you start as close as you can to the start line and the elite people. But the only thing I can say is roll with the punches, take confidence in your training that you'll be able to get through it, and eventually you will find a rhythm, as the field will thin out at some stage. But one warning that's constant across the track is water stations and aid stations as well. So people will instinctively go to the first couple of tables when they're dying for some fluid and they see it like an oasis in the desert. But if you can, try and remember, go to the last few tables, because there's less congestion there and you're less likely to run into people, clip some heels, spill your drink or whatever. So, but obviously as you get closer to the finish line as well, people will probably get a bit more desperate for fluid. So just hold that in the back of your mind, that try and go to the end couple of tables to get a drink, because it's bedlam, particularly the first couple of tables, and there's too much traffic. There you have it, my 5 essential tips for running your first marathon or mastering your marathon race day experience. So remember to find your pace group, trust your training, maintain your routine, enjoy the bloody thing, and embrace the congestion as well. So if you got value out of this video, remember to like, subscribe, share, whatever it might be, and good luck with your marathon journey, and hope you smash it. And remember, make running great again, and we'll see you soon. Hello, marathon enthusiasts. Number 1, if you're running for a goal time, try and find and stick with a pacer. Now, if you're a newbie running, you're thinking, well, what's a pacer? Well, so if it's a windy day and you're running in a bunch, that actually might be that might help later on in the marathon in terms of motivation and emotion to. Oh, just